Bitcoin had one of its biggest days in history yesterday. And for once, we're not talking about how it was leveraged traders or liquidations or any other technical move that caused it, but actually talking about the importance of the fundamentals and people buying it as a flight to safety in countries where their wealth is at risk. I'm going to talk about Bitcoin, what's happening with altcoins, as well as the news. I've got three special guests today. Kevin, CMS intern, everybody's fan favorite on Twitter. Dave Nadig, of course, to talk about the Russian market and ETFs. And my producer, who's never shown his face here, Mike, who is on the ground actually in St. Petersburg, Russia, and has some very interesting insight on what he's seeing over there. Guys, this new format, epic. I'm absolutely loving the energy and the guests. You do not want to miss this one. Let's go.
Let's go.
What is up, everybody? I am Scott Melker, also known as the Wolf of All Streets. Before we get started, please, mandatory, I have to ask you to subscribe to the channel and go Amazon yourself a SHIB oven mitt and slap the like button with your Shiba Inu oven mitt that you received on Prime in the last 30 to 47 seconds. So guys, listen, the market has been absolutely crazy. As I alluded to yesterday, I don't think I had on my bingo card for February 28th, the last candle of the monthly close, that we were going to get a 17% move on Bitcoin, but I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it. And importantly, as I mentioned, it's more of a fundamental move than a technical one at this point. Of course, I've been long since 35,000. As I've showed, I always show my trades. Don't see a real reason to close that right now. So I'm just going to ride that for a little while and see what happens. But do have some very special guests. As I mentioned, they'll be coming on progressively to talk about the news. This is the new format. It's what we're going to do. And just to give you guys a little information, the plan moving forward is we're getting rid of the afternoon streams, and we're locking in the morning streams at 10 a.m. pretty much every day of the week. Monday, probably news, just like we had yesterday, some charts, technical analysis. Tuesday's the same. Wednesday, we're moving Chartapalooza to the morning. So all those requests that I chart usually on Wednesday afternoon, we're going to do that Wednesday mornings. And then Thursday, since last week was so incredibly epic, Dave, who's one of the guests today, was a big part of that. That roundtable that I hosted that was completely spontaneous and accidental, we're going to try to do that every Thursday. We're going to try to do that every Thursday. We're going to try to just bring on guests, let them talk about basically whatever they want and have them cycle through. And I will try to avoid utilizing the restroom or drinking water or consuming food for 2 to 3 hours on those days. So guys, that's the plan. That's what we're trying to do. We'll see about Fridays. Of course, the podcast every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. But let's dive right in here to what's actually happening. Of course. Oh, first mover America. Usually we get first mover Asia. Here we are in the United States. Bitcoin nears 45K on increased demand from Ukraine and Russia. We've seen a bit of retracement since this was published. But yeah, this is what we want to talk about today, right? We always have the charts, and I do believe that the charts were obviously showing us that a move was likely. I've said kind of repeatedly that I think the bottom was in around 33K. On this move, we made a higher low even on the news that the war was starting. That's when we had the dip to around 34, 35. But this time, it doesn't really matter what's happening on the charts. Seemingly, the data on chain, the volume in trading with rubles, and the volume in general in Russia and Ukraine is showing that people there are actually buying Bitcoin as a flight to safety as they see their net worth tumble and they see their access to bank accounts disappearing, SWIFT being cut off in Russia. All of these narratives, if you're on the ground there, I would imagine would be causing a panic and you'd be looking for a place to put your money, right? Crazy seeing this in real time. We were the crazy Bitcoiners who talked about this being potentially possible in the past, but it was always sort of an idea. Bitcoin's never really been to war, or been through a situation like this. But just a couple weeks ago, we watched people rush to Bitcoin for donations in Canada when the Canadian government started cutting people's bank accounts off. And now in the moment that people need it the most, for the first time in history, they actually have an asset that they can run to try to help preserve their wealth. And that's not just true of Bitcoin, by the way. Like, it's fun to pound that narrative and to talk about it because we're Bitcoiners and we're maxi pads or whatever people call us. I think that's a good name for it because I'm not a maxi. But let's not forget that people all over the world don't just think, hey, I'm fucked, I need Bitcoin. What they actually want is dollars more of the time, right? And that's why we've seen the Ukraine USDT trading at a 10% premium. People are buying stable coins for $1.10 instead of $1, because if they're not going to have access to dollars through legacy systems, now they can also do that through crypto. So it's not just about buying Bitcoin, of course. It's also about buying stable coins. And listen, this is crazy. The number of Bitcoin whales spikes as sanctions on Russia bite. So this isn't just your average people rushing into Bitcoin. The number of blockchain wallet addresses with hordes of more than 1,000 Bitcoin, around 43 million, surged on Monday as $43 million. Surged on Monday as Western nations stepped up sanctions. The figure increased by nearly 5% to a total of 2,226. 5% up of whale wallets. So this would also not only lead you to believe that whales in Ukraine, not the Ukraine, and Russia are buying Bitcoin to hedge, but also you've got to imagine that if you're sitting anywhere else in the world and seeing this happen and you have a lot of money and are looking for a place to protect some of your wealth, you might start putting that money into Bitcoin as well. This is really a pretty astounding statistic to see whale wallets increase by 5% in one day. It's actually really happening here, guys. So listen, I'm going to bring on the first guest right now, and then I'll take a look at the chart. We've got Kevin, CMS intern. What is up, man? Let me I'll remove that so we can do this, and I'll do the thing where it's our faces. How are you, buddy? How's everything over there?
Scott? It's going well.
I like your shirt. I like your shirt.
I appreciate it.
Proudly rocking the FTX US. So what do you think's going on with Bitcoin? And we'll talk about Ethereum as well, but what do you think is going on with Bitcoin right now? Do you think that this really is a fundamental move, as I said, or do you think we're yet again in a situation where whales just see an opportunity and pump the price?
No, yeah, I really do think this last week has been one of the biggest fundamental narrative shifts for Bitcoin in a long time, or maybe ever, right? Like you said, Bitcoin people have always been kind of seen as the crazies, or kind of saying the sky is falling, when fiat currencies have mostly been fine for the last 9-10 years, or relatively at least. So actually seeing something like Russia having 2/3 of its funds frozen, even what we saw in Canada, a lot closer to home, last week, it kind of started there. The government didn't like one of the protests going on, and funds were frozen. So people are starting to see, whether or not they want Russia or Canadian funds to be frozen could be up for debate. They definitely don't want their own funds frozen. They see that this is happening in the world. They're thinking, maybe it could happen to me. And Bitcoin is the obvious kind of known fix for that problem. So
yeah, I agree 100% with that sentiment. It's interesting you touched on the fact that everyone has their sort of opinion on what they should do to the governments or in general, but when it comes to you personally, you definitely know that you don't want your funds frozen, right? And we sort of have this situation, and we'll talk about this later, but the situation where, the Ukraine's asking exchanges to freeze people's wallets or cut off everybody in Russia and things like that. To me, that's a really, really slippery slope.
Yeah, absolutely. And I still do think, right, I don't think US citizens right now are thinking, hey, they might shut off my money next week, right? It's not buying because they need it. I think a lot of people are now seeing the narrative, though, and they've always seen Bitcoin as kind of speculative, I want to seek returns. Now they're seeing it as wow, there is a real use case. People are probably going to buy this narrative. I think that was a lot of yesterday's move. We saw a huge candle on the daily, and a lot of that was probably driven by people going, wow, look at the fundamental change that's going on right now. I bet people want to hold more Bitcoin, moving forward after this. So I think a lot of it was narrative. I think there was also a lot of people kind of staying out, kind of based on the cycles, every 4 years we dump off. There's tax reasons. So I think we might have been a little artificially low. So that plus the fundamental shift, we really got a nice move. Yeah, I think that's a lot of what's going on right now.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. So what does that mean for altcoins, right? Because we've sort of seen, and you work at a fund, obviously, you guys have your finger pretty heavily on the pulse, I think, of what's going on in this market in general. So we always have obviously the classic sort of Bitcoin moves first. People FOMO into Bitcoin. They sell their altcoins. Altcoins get wrecked relative to Bitcoin, right? They do fine USD. And then Bitcoin chills, which is maybe what we're seeing here, right? It kind of calms down for a bit under resistance. Altcoins go wild. Do you think that now we have this sort of like Bitcoin focused situation that might last? Or do you think that we'll kind of get that normal cycle and altcoins are going to start catching up?
Yeah, I would say that this like the Bitcoin led rally is really the rally that you want, right? Random altcoins
Always.
popping off. It's fun and it's great and it provides good content. But the sustainability really isn't there when Bitcoin is the first mover and it's having the biggest candles outside of Luna, obviously last week. But when Bitcoin is really pumping, that's a good sign. It's healthy. Like I think people have been avoiding it because they almost haven't seen the upside just from the speculation in the last year. But now with the fundamental shift, when people see, there is real value to this tech, um, people buying Bitcoin kind of creates sticky money in crypto. So then, if they get bored of the Bitcoin narrative, say in 2 years or something, and the fundamentals aren't as in your face as they are right now, like that's when you kind of see a lot of dispersion. Like money that comes into crypto tends to stay in crypto,
Yeah,
right?
it's so true.
That's what we've seen. So when Bitcoin really goes up, if stuff kind of chills out, you could definitely see a lot of those funds roll off Bitcoin and kind of go into the alts. But a lot of them move together, right? Like even yesterday, Bitcoin had a huge God candle, and it market cap wise, that was definitely the biggest gainer. But percentage wise, like Ethereum pumped right with it. Kind of all the other altcoins as you go down the list. So yeah, I mean it's sticky. It's helps coins, especially when you see Bitcoin moving first. So yeah.
So sort of a rising tide lifts all boats. Bitcoin goes, and then there's confidence in the market. Once again, I always sort of joke. It's like people say, altcoins do well when Bitcoin moves sideways, but they forget the caveat that it has to be sideways with the belief that it's going to go up, not sideways with the belief that it's about to dump to hell, right?
Yeah,
People
exactly.
don't rush into altcoins when they think you're consolidating in a bear market and about to dump. So maybe now we have this kind of confident move up and we start to see it. I mean, I can speak anecdotally from my portfolio. I'm maybe 20 something percent Bitcoin at this point total in it. And we're basically at the same price, right under 45,000 as a few weeks ago. But my portfolio is still down about 20% overall, right? So that should give some insight into how much people are focusing on Bitcoin and have been at least avoiding alts over the last time. They've really taken a hit against Bitcoin.
Yeah, when enthusiasm starts to come out of the crypto markets, alts are the last place you want to be, and everyone knows that, right? So then you get the game theory, and it just cascades as low as it can. But yeah, I mean, I think like when you see a move with Bitcoin, like we said, it kind of sticks in the market. In the past, at least, it has kind of acted like a slingshot, right? Like the farther you see Bitcoin come up, the alts kind of drag below, and then the bigger the pump, the more that they send it. So
Let's do that.
again. Yeah, hopefully.
Let's do
right?
that
I'm
like
not saying
maybe
that's every
tomorrow
time,
or something.
but
Can we schedule that?
yeah, I
And now,
wish.
obviously, you mentioned Luna already. Is there anything that you're specifically looking at? I mean, now it feels almost predictable that it's like those big name layer ones that were performing well before are going to be inevitably the next sort of movers.
Yeah, I mean, Luna's had a monster week, right? I think last time I looked, it was like up 75% on the 7 day. Um, I mean, it's been an awesome ecosystem. There's a ton of development going on there. Kind of the stablecoin narrative being fundamental for crypto has taken off a bunch. That helps Luna. There's also kind of in adjacent projects, right? Like we'll see EVMOS launch soon. They're launching their token soon. Celestia is a really cool project coming up that's kind of adjacent. So a lot of the ecos built around Luna have been doing well. So it's definitely one to watch. Yeah.
For sure. Well, that's awesome. You got to tell Dan that we need to get him back on here as well. Go give him a kick in the butt and tell him that we need him on here. I appreciate all of the insight. And it's great to have you. You're welcome back anytime. Thank you so much, everybody. Follow CMS Intern on Twitter, right? CMSINTERN. Guys, he's one of the best.
Awesome.
He does intern notes on people's podcasts and conversations. It actually is extremely valuable because if you don't want to watch something, it's like he offers cliff notes to everything important that's happening in the industry. It's really an incredible added value. So Kevin, thank you so much for joining.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott.
By the way, guys, he was wearing that FTX.US t-shirt. Today's guest on the podcast, which is out on Apple and Spotify and such, but will be out soon on YouTube this afternoon is Brett Harrison, the CEO of FTX US, which was quite a conversation. I think that you guys will enjoy. I'm going to dig right into the charts, and then we'll get to the next guest right here. So all these guys were trading at 44,000. It's Tuesday, March 1st. So I feel compelled to at least share the monthly chart, guys, right? I share this chart every so often. As you can see, Bitcoin, if you zoom way out, is in the never-ending bull market, right? Higher highs, higher lows, and everything else in between is noise if you're an investor. Yesterday, this candle looked almost exactly like this one right up here when we sort of topped. Let me zoom in. When we topped at 65 and sort of even when we topped at 69, well, that candle turned from a doji to sort of this spinning top here with a much larger body. Of course, we're trading about below that EQ, but I do think that this looks very, very bullish, especially considering that it happened right there at the end of the day. Take a look at the weekly. I mean, absolutely massive. 42,000 is basically, you ever seen Happy Gilmore? Why won't you go to your home? Go to your home. That's 42,000 for basically the last 13 or 14 months for Bitcoin. No matter how high or how low it goes, it always comes back to 42,000. It's like a massive magnet. Well, we broke through that and 39.6 in one God candle yesterday. And here you can see it sort of on the daily. Also notable that was a break above the 50 MA. A lot of, I'm not a huge MA guy, but a lot of traders and certainly a lot of algos are programmed to trade around that. So seeing it pass through, do you really heat up your knives to put them through butter? Like, I know it's some fancy restaurant shit, but it seems kind of stupid. I just use a normal knife and let the butter defrost. Either way, it went through the 50 MA just like that. So listen, don't be surprised. I'm just telling you, if we get some dips along the way and come back to test these levels, and to me, those are times to add to your position and not start to get particularly fearful. As you can see, guys, all of it was sort of, listen, it's my thing. All of this was preceded by bullish divergence with RSI oversold right when the war narrative was hitting on basically every single time frame up through the 12-hour. And the daily is still very far from hitting up to overbought here. 12-hour not overbought yet. 6 just entering. 4-hour in the power zone. This is still looking pretty damn bullish. So guys, on to the next story here, and I've got the perfect person to talk about it. Russia ETFs continue plunge as its stock market remains closed. Guys, if you want to make sure that your market doesn't drop, you just close it. It's really easy. It's not even like, oh, you don't want stocks to go down, close them. Kind of reminiscent of the GameStop thing, except for at that point, you only had a sell button and no buy button, right? This time they're sort of turning off both buttons, but certainly turning off the sell. Obviously a move to try to float the market and prevent it from continuing to dump. But there are still ways to trade around the Russian market. And of course, now I have amazing guest, Dave Nadig here. Dave, you were part of the Epic live stream on Thursday. And now I'm hoping you're just going to randomly show up like every couple days on here. I cannot hear you. Can you guys hear Dave? I think you might be muted.
Professional. That's what I am.
Yeah, but you look good. I see, and I assume that was my fault, and I did something wrong again. So
no worries. Yeah, it's crazy days out there in the Russian market, isn't it? It's this isn't new, right? Anytime you end up with geopolitical crises, people shut their markets, right? Greece did this, Egypt did this. Those are the last 2 times. But going back all the way to World War II, right? I mean, the German market was closed for 2.5 years, right? So this is a pretty well-trod piece of territory. What's so interesting, as you've been talking about now, is just because everything's so interconnected, that what used to be kind of a defense mechanism from a state that is in the middle of a crisis, which you could definitely say Russia's in the middle of its own self-created crisis at the moment, that they would do this to sort of calm things down. But actually what I think it's doing is it's accelerating the de-Westernization of the Russian market, period. Because now we've already got MSCI talking about taking Russia out of emerging markets and making it a standalone market, which is something they really only do with things like Iran, places like that. So it's moving Russia towards sort of pariah state much more quickly than I honestly expected, right? We did this to Iran in the 70s and 80s. It took 5 years. Now it's happened in 3 or 4 days.
Well, why do you think that is? Is it just, I get this feeling that sort of, there was obviously sentiment against Russia starting a war, clearly, right? But it seems that the expectation was Russia was going to pile in. It was going to end quickly. Things would sort of be fine in Russia. And then all of a sudden, this feeling that Ukraine could actually defend itself. Of course, when countries saw that, it feels like they started piling in with support that wasn't necessarily there at the beginning. And now Russia has to deal with the economic consequences, and they didn't think they were there. So do you think that that's really what's happening? It's even though it's only it feels like it's been months. It's 5 days.
Yeah, and on the one hand, that makes me happy in the sense that if you're going to use sanctions as a tool to achieve a global objective, they should be brutal and quick, because otherwise there's no point in them. They just cause pain to everybody in the global economy. So from that perspective, yeah, if you're going to do sanctions, really do it. The flip side here is the unintended consequences, and things like ETFs are a really interesting place where you start seeing those unintended consequences like pan out. So for example, in the US, we have 2 big ETFs tracking the space: RSX from Van Eck and ERUS from iShares, tracking different versions of what does the Russian market look like. The big difference is that the Van Eck product uses almost exclusively London depository receipts, and BlackRock tends to use the locals, right? When you can argue about what's better or not in most cases, but right now, all those London receipts are still trading. So RSX has been able to stay open. It's actually the price discovery mechanism for what Russia is worth right now, because it's the only place money's changing hands.
Okay, so what is Russia worth right now and what you're seeing? Because you can't buy and sell Russian stocks. The ruble is dumping to hell. This is the way you can trade around the Russian market. What's happening with these ETFs?
Yeah, well, I mean, based on things like Gazprom in London is trading down 50% versus yesterday, right? So
50%.
Yeah, it's down 139 to a handle of 120. So like that's down 50% roughly. It's down 85% in 12 sessions. So, I mean, that sort of tells you where we're going, right? Which is towards zero extraordinarily quickly. Historically, what's happened here, we saw this with Egypt. The ETF is price discovery. There are going to be a lot of people over the next week or two as this evolves who are going to be like, oh my God, when Russia reopens, all those stocks are going to like soar because you can buy an energy producer at a PE of 2 or something like that. That's not what happens. What happens is the ETF will tell you where that market will open. There'll be a little bit of adjustment when it does, but it's going to be measured in single-digit percentages, and the ETF will tell you exactly what's going to happen.
Right, and you have to make the assumption that your average person who's invested and doesn't have a sell button literally has their finger on it, waiting for the second that the market's going to open.
Yeah,
most people who are losing all their money and looking for a flight to safety aren't like waiting for the market to open so they can buy the dip.
Well, exactly. And in Russia, in the case of RSX in particular, if you already own this, you probably already sold it to the lowest bidder you could find out there, because everybody just puked this stuff out over the last 3 or 4 days. Now, interestingly, a bunch had been created. So there was a huge short selling opportunity here. A ton of shares are available. Like you can get 500,000 shares right now in iBroker to borrow. You're going to pay a 30% rebate to get access to those shares. So you can, like, I got a lot of those last night, like, oh my God, short of the century. I was like, enjoy your 30% headwind, because that's what it is. And, and that's what it should be, right? Liquidity matters. Like you guys have learned this in the crypto space in spades, right? Liquidity is everything. And you remove all of the liquidity from a market, guess what? The value drops precipitously.
That said, you're obviously not financial advice of any sort, but in a situation like this, historically, this market will reopen, right? And I guess you're gambling on whether, like you said, Russia becomes a complete pariah and basically is detached from global markets. But if you're of the opinion that Russia remains a part of the global sort of market, will there be dips there to buy? I mean, I had Mark Yusko on, it was years ago probably, but he basically made the point that Sberbank, which I believe is how you pronounce, is the best bank in the world. That's down probably. I haven't looked, but that's probably down 50%.
Well, I mean, you got to combine that with the fact that the ruble's now worth, a whole lot less than it was a couple of days ago too. And that bank is predominantly, working in rubles. So, look, I think it's crazy to try to predict the end state of where we're at, because it's on a spectrum of everybody takes their marbles and goes home, and we cry about it a lot, to nuclear war. And that's a pretty wide band to try to make a prediction algorithm around. So, however it happens, yes, at some point, I suspect there will be a Russian stock market again. The question will be, as Westerners, will we actually be allowed to access it, right? This morning, we had prime brokers actually cut off trading in Russia-related securities. So not just stuff trading on RM, not just stuff in Moscow, but RSX in the US, some prime brokers cut off from trading, which means if it's sitting in your fund, your 40 Act mutual fund, your hedge fund, whatever, you literally have no way to access it because your prime broker says they won't clear the trade.
So how much systemic risk? I mean, how much systemic risk is that? Like, how much contagion could there be from something like that? I mean, is RSX sitting in everybody's like casual mutual fund? No,
thankfully, it's just like 3% of the global portfolio, right? So it is fairly small. It's the size of Spain or Brazil, right? It's not actually economically, from a stock market perspective, that important. In certain markets, energy and agriculture in particular, there are enormous implications for cutting Russia out of the global economy. From a stock market investor's perspective, it's those carry-on contagion issues that, frankly, this is happening so fast we can't keep up, right? So like I spent last night going through the LSE listing requirements. By my token, at the end of today, all of those IRs should get delisted in London and not trade tomorrow. That would have another giant pile of implications. They haven't done it yet.
Right. So how do people eventually get out of those? What
they go to zero. No, they literally go to zero, right?
Yeah, so that's they literally go to zero. You're done.
Talk about impermanent and permanent losses, right? This is permanent loss, right? If Gazprom goes to only available to be traded by Russian citizens, then you as an individual investor are pretty much the equivalent of owning Iranian stocks in 1975.
Fun.
Right? They go to zero.
That sounds bad.
Yeah.
That sounds not good. If I was somewhere on the spectrum from good to bad.
But here's one piece of good news, right? All of the pieces of the plumbing are still working, right? So yes, there are going to be contagion effects here. They're going to probably have much more to do with capital flow than market structure, meaning it's not going to be the plumbing that breaks. It's going to be nobody expected this $1 trillion to be in this bucket. And those will have implications, and that's going to make markets rocky. Frankly, that's all probably pretty good for Bitcoin, right? I think people are going to continue to see this volatility and say, well, okay, I understand that self-clearing instantaneous trading has its issues, but in this case, perhaps this is a good way.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to look far back to very similar narratives in China with Evergrande, right? I mean, it's a completely different situation, but at the end of the day, people are basically going down the rabbit hole trying to find who has exposure and where that could eventually affect them.
And from a global macro perspective, I think it creates an interesting, subtle shift in the narrative around Bitcoin, because obviously we've all heard, you were just talking about it earlier, the core narrative of store of value, they can't take it like they can their fiat. All of those things have had a little proof points in the last couple of months, right? So that's great. We all understand that. But actually, I think there's an interesting question about, does Bitcoin become the value in motion tool of the global economy? Not so much the value storage tool, right? Because if you were sitting in the Ukraine right now, you could do it right now, and that's valuable. But by the time you maybe repatriate to central France or something like that, you're probably going to convert it back to euros because you're going to need to pay taxes and get a house. So the idea of Bitcoin as this mobility tool is really interesting all by itself.
What I love about, I love that idea. But what I love about Bitcoin over the years is that it plays so many different roles that you theoretically thought might be the case. And then they actually play out. And, it plays the digital gold narrative. It plays the store of value narrative. It plays the flight to safety narrative. It plays, just as you said, sort of this moving target. It's really incredible. It's really incredible. And that's mostly just a function of it being there and available all the time without someone being able to shut it down. Very simple thing.
And honestly, the fact that it is purely a psychological commodity is why it has value now, because we have seen the entire Western world rally onto one side of this equation. That's actually part of what's supporting Bitcoin too, because there's this recognition that this is a useful tool, right? Raising money for people in the Ukraine, getting people out of the Ukraine, right?
Yeah, absolutely love it. We got to obviously keep moving on. Dave, if you're free, you're welcome to join again on Thursday for the free for all. Everybody,
I'll be around.
So Dave, you can follow him on Twitter, DAVENADIG, Dave Nadig.
Yep, and I always pin my last name at the top of that. So
if you need to know anything about context and certainly about ETFs, this is your guy, and now my guy, hopefully. so thank you as usual for jumping on and for the insight. Thanks, man. So guys, now moving on with the news. Ukraine now accepting Polkadot after raising 20 million in Bitcoin and Ethereum. This is awesome because obviously Ukraine tweeted their Bitcoin and Ethereum addresses. And of course, immediately the crypto community went, this must be a scam. It can't be real. Yeah, because we think everything's a scam, but it was actually real, and they've raised over $20 million. If you guys saw, Gavin Wood, the founder of Polkadot, immediately responded and said, if you put a Polkadot address, I will personally donate $5 million right now. Seems like that's a hard deal to pass on. They did include a Polkadot address. They are now taking Polkadot as well, and I'm assuming that he did do $5 million. The promo maybe, but like he could have said, I'll do 500 grand. And still would have been good promo. 5 million is a big deal. I don't think that we should be dismissive of that at all. Absolutely a huge move. Let's take a look, as we do here. Let's take a look at the Polkadot chart right now. As a result, whenever I mention altcoin, it's my thing to take a very quick look at the chart. Well, I actually shared this in today's newsletter, not to say to buy it. It's at resistance, but this looks 1, 2, 3 perfect touches on resistance, trying to break through now. If you get a breakthrough of this resistance, this looks like a pretty damn bullish chart, especially if it comes on volume. And what's interesting is I posted this at 22 as well in the newsletter. And I said, you're at resistance, both horizontal and descending in that case. It could get rejected, and that's likely to give you a lower entry. I know a lot of people have don't like to trade descending lines. The beauty of them when they work is that when you make the next step, the next try, you're down 20, 30% further and potentially have a better entry for the exact same move. So I am watching that on Polkadot. Here, Ukraine lawyer says they have received numerous Russian wallet addresses for crypto blacklist. So this is where we get into that slippery slope, right? They're basically searching for anyone who's been sanctioned or should have been sanctioned who's using crypto to block their wallets. Okay. I mean, I understand why that's compelling and important, but it's almost inevitable that you'll have collateral damage and people that were not intended to be blocked that are going to be blocked. And we've seen the story, obviously, that Ukraine has asked crypto exchanges en masse to block everyone in Russia. Well, Coinbase is the latest exchange to deny the request to block Russian crypto. You can't do this. You just can't do it. Why would you punish the people on the ground who are already going through financial hardship by blocking their access to the one asset that we know will be trading 24/7, have liquidity, and could theoretically save their lives? I just don't even understand that call. It's very much an affront to the ethos of crypto and how we operate completely in the first place. Actually, really funny. I saw this story that I just pulled up. Speaking of people being sanctioned, Russian oligarchs move yachts as U.S. looks to hunt down freeze assets. Basically, the U.S., we're coming for your yachts. These guys, four of the biggest yachts in the world are moving to Maldives and Moldova, I believe, Montenegro and the Maldives, trying to escape the United States Army and having basically, maybe not the Navy, but having their yachts repurposed probably into American aircraft carriers, for all I know, right? Oh, that would make a nice aircraft carrier. We could use that. That'll be the USS Trump Jr. right there. The USS Trump Jr., the USS Hunter Biden, right? I'm an equal opportunity maker, funner, ever. So guys, yeah, but listen, so I want you guys to finally be able to put a face to a name. Finally, my producer, Mike, he does not live in Russia, but he is there. He is on the ground in St. Petersburg and was just in Kiev over the past few weeks in the Ukraine visiting friends. Mike, everybody finally gets to you. We should put the caveat. He's in St. Petersburg. The internet is very limited, and God knows how well we'll be able to hear him today. But guys, this is the man behind all of my production and work, certainly on YouTube and largely with the podcast. So guys, say hi to Mike. Hi, Mike.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Scott. How are you doing?
How are you? So listen, it's fun to obviously joke and talk about these things, but this is not a joke when you're on the ground. What are you seeing there in St. Petersburg right now? What's the sentiment? And then we'll talk more about specifically to crypto.
Yeah, well, regarding the sentiment in St. Petersburg and in Russia right now, people are devastated. Like, we are not panicking. People just, are like really, really sad about what's going on because no one really expected the war will start. Like just one day before, people were like, living their normal lives. And, everybody knew that the Russian army was on the border with Ukraine, but still we wouldn't believe, that this will happen and that Putin would start the war. So it was a surprise for everybody. And like my friends, my family, like people don't know what to do. Everybody's like asking like, what can we do? Like, how can I immigrate from Russia? How can I leave Russia? And people are saying like they can't even, you know, so some of my friends can't even go to protest because they don't have any power.
Well, I've heard, I mean, and I believe you
No,
tweeted it, that you get arrested if you show up with a poster, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you can't.
yeah, that's a different story. But just, you know, the sentiment that how people feel, they don't have power just to go, you know, because there is so much bad news going on there, and people just don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
And yeah, the other thing is the protest. If you go to the protest, you get arrested almost immediately. Like you can't even show the poster. If you show the poster, if you say no war, you get arrested. Police don't give any shit, you know. And people, I think it's also because of Corona, maybe because of Navalny being in the prison right now. But people are not organized. We don't have like opposition leaders. So people are not really organized. Some people go to some places to protest, and then you know that they're there because there are, you know, news that police arrests the people who come to protest, basically.
And what's crazy is you hear people, you know, it's very easy, I think, when you're detached to have an opinion on what's going on somewhere else. But you see, when we talk about, you know, the exchanges potentially blocking all Russian users, and you see people sort of like flippantly on social media being like, well, the Russians should have voted out Putin. They deserve it. They should, if it's such a big deal and you're a Russian person, go out and protest and get a new leader, and then you can have your like crypto back. That doesn't really play.
That doesn't play because, you know, yeah, I mean, it should be like this, right? We should go and, you know, protest and, you know, have people and, you know, vote against Putin. No, but like people don't want him. I made like a poll on my Instagram account within my friends. All right. So there are people like 30-year-old with education, you know, and so on and so forth. So 2 out of 60 people voted for Putin.
Right.
And then official information that he gets like 70%.
Right.
So
yeah, I think everyone knows there's no real.
It's fake. But basically, everything he says is fake. It's a lie, and people don't believe him. I mean, maybe some people in Russia do, and some people definitely they actually support the war. But among my community, among people in big cities in St. Petersburg, in Moscow, people hate him, but they're also afraid. They don't want to go to prison because, you know, you don't know what's going to happen there. Like, you know, police is very violent in Russia.
It's crazy. Do you have, I mean, obviously, like you're just one man who's there, you know, but do you have we just talked about how crazy the market is, the currency crashing, all these things. Do you have a gauge of how people are dealing with this financially and how much fear they have about what will happen when this all ends? If it ends?
Well, I think that, you know, you can't really do anything right now because majority of people, they don't have any savings. And if they have any savings, like the best thing is that like probably it is like just US dollars, because it's you know, Russia's been through like a lot of defaults and crises. And that was basically like the best solution from everything is just to buy US dollars. So over the weekend, there were queues to the banks to get cash and to buy US dollars. So, yeah. But basically, people who invested money in Russian economy, in the shares and stocks, they just, you know, lost their money.
Right. But because you are sitting and listen, everybody knows I love Whalefin, Amber. They've been a sponsor. They're incredible. Yeah. You're a customer because you work with me and we're customers of our sponsors, right?
Definitely.
But you got it. And just as only anecdotal, of course, and I can't speak to it, but you got an email from them because you're geolocated in Russia right now, right? What did that say?
Yeah, I can maybe like, you know, show it like in a second. But basically, I think they suspended my account blocked, pending review. That's what they wrote me. Due to the recent sanctions imposed on Russia, your account has been suspended pending further review. Your assets on our platform are safe. Upon the completion of our review, we can advise you on whether you can withdraw them. We apologize for the inconvenience. Yeah. Well, a good thing that not a good thing for Whalefin, but maybe right now is a good. It's not a popular platform in Russia, all right? So the most popular platform for crypto is Binance, obviously, and FTX, I guess, and maybe some other like Chinese exchanges that allow like trading for, for basically non-US citizens. Yeah, and I think that Binance is not gonna sanction Russia. Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, not only do I think that none of them are going to sanction Russia, I think that they will cooperate with sanctions of individuals because they'll kind of have to. But they're donating $10 million to Ukraine, right? They're doing almost literally the opposite, Binance. But that's interesting. And listen, I'm sure that that's a move that these certain exchanges or brokers have to make based on some legal requirement or something. But like, you're not even Russian. I mean, you are like, your ancestors are, but you're not a Russian citizen, correct? I could be wrong, but
you could be wrong. Yeah, actually, I am Russian citizen, but I'm also like Israeli citizen and EU citizen. So
right, I knew that you were Israeli.
I mean,
so,
I'm more on like a safe side here.
Yeah, but so it's like you just happen to be there, so your account's getting blocked. You're not even like under the sort of like a permanent resident, and you still have to worry about unexpectedly having no access to your crypto. I mean, I love all these platforms. I have coins on all of them, but it certainly makes you think about weighting more heavily towards self-custody.
Yeah, definitely. And I also, let my friends who own some crypto that, they can like use my Binance account just in case anything happens, because it's like Israeli account. So it's not going to be affected. But yeah, people, they probably are not thinking that much of money, right? Because there are like things that are worse can happen. Like basically you probably like maybe won't be able to leave country. We don't know, like maybe they will ask men to go to the army, to join the army, and there is a panic among young people in Russia because we never faced it, of course, right? It's like it's a war. Also, one more thing I wanted to add: in Russia, you can't call it a war. Like officially, they say, if you call it a war, you will be arrested. Media can't call it a war. Only we should call it a military operation or special operation. That's fucked up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's clear that the story being sold to the Russian media is that Ukraine is the aggressor and that this is necessary for the defense of Russia and that it's all pawns of the United States. All thing, man, what a crazy fucking world we live in, man.
Yeah.
Really
so I just want to ask our audience to donate to Ukraine in crypto. I think it's a good cause, and support the Ukraine. But also, please, guys, Russia is not Putin, all right? So Putin started this war, and I feel that what we as Russians should do is confront him and get rid of him. But it's difficult. It's difficult because he's a dictator and he controls army, police, and it's gonna be tough for us to get rid of him.
Horrible, sad. But Mike, thank you for sharing. I know it's hard while you're over there, and we've never even brought you on camera, but now we can. Now we can, guys. If you want to follow Mike on Twitter, he doesn't tweet that much, and Twitter was blocked in Russia for a little while, right?
It's not actually. I think it's not really blocked, but they slow it down. So for me, in order to use Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, actually right now, also I need to use VPN and also StreamYard right now.
Wow,
I'm on a VPN.
Pretty good.
Yeah,
and you don't even sound like a robot like I did all day yesterday. So
yeah, amazing,
pretty impressive. Guys, if you want to follow him, it's Mike, Mike Vishnevsky, VISHNEVSKY, MIKEVISHNEVSKY. He might be mad at me because I don't even know if he wants you guys to follow him, but you should anyway.
Follow me.
you can follow there, Mike. They're asking if you're on Instagram.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I'll message later in the chat my Instagram account.
Perfect. Well, guys, Mike has not like missed a second. I didn't even know for a while that he was in Russia and has not missed a second of like being bothered by me 24/7 with all of this going on. And like I said, he was in Ukraine, 2 weeks ago?
Actually 2 months ago. Yeah, 2 months ago. Yeah. But actually, back then in Ukraine, the Russian army was already like concentrating on the border, and people were like, I was asking like, guys, like, are you concerned about it? And they were like, no, we don't give a shit.
Nobody cared. It was like normal.
I think nobody cared until like the day the war started, actually.
Listen, I like a lot of us were making sort of like not jokes about war, obviously, but the sentiment seemed until like 2 hours before that it just wasn't going to happen. And then it was like a big game of chess. It wasn't going to happen. And all of a sudden there was a war and we all felt horribly shitty about sort of like, you know, joking about it. But I think it seems like that was the sentiment in Ukraine as well. Like the people just, yeah, fine. They're just doing what they've been doing for years, right? Nothing changed.
Yeah, nobody was expecting it.
Yeah. Well, this is a funny comment,
except for the US.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Mike. Nice to put a face on the guy who never picks my chart requests. Mike doesn't do the chart requests. That's Adam, my assistant. So just so you guys know, you can't blame Mike for that. Mike does production. Find a new guy to blame, Drew. Well, Mike, thank you so much. And we get finished up here because I have a podcast to do. So everybody say goodbye to Mike. Bye, Mike.
Yes.
I need to remember to add. I need to do this right now. I need to add people's names. Look, see, they weren't on there and they don't know who we're talking to. That was me. I was bad producing while Mike was on. That's my fault. All right, guys. Well, thank you. See you later, Mike. We'll talk soon, like probably in 10 minutes. Guys, so listen, I have a podcast coming up in 10 minutes with Sandeep from Polygon. I'm really looking forward to that conversation. Going to be amazing. So listen, I haven't even looked at Bitcoin since Bitcoin 43.4, a little retracement. No surprises there. As we said, that you likely will see some dips and opportunities to get in lower. Will be interesting what happens with altcoins. Let me remind you guys, if you are newsletter subscribers, we usually do chart requests on Wednesday morning for Wednesday afternoon. I sent that out today. We're doing Chartapalooza tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. instead of in the afternoon. So you have all day today to send those requests and bother Adam, not Mike. To bother Adam, not Mike, with your chart requests. And we will be doing Chartapalooza tomorrow. So that is the next time that we will be back. Listen, I love your guys' feedback. I'm hoping you're enjoying the new format, largely thanks to obviously Mike's brilliant mind. We're trying to find some new inspiration, a way to differentiate. Don't just want to be like yapping and making jokes about the news all day. There's a time to make jokes, and we're going to continue to do that. But there's also a time to bring on the experts who actually understand what we're talking about and provide you guys with better information. And that is what we are very much trying to do, guys. Until Chartapalooza tomorrow morning.
Let's go.